And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to World Toss here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Now, the presidents of Bulgaria and North Macedonia recently met in Sofia to discuss diplomatic relations, with a focus on strengthening dialogue and regional cooperation. This visit, unofficial but symbolically significant, marks President Gordana Siljanovska's first to Bulgaria after assuming office. A key topic was the progress of North Macedonia's EU accession and addressing outstanding issues in bilateral relations. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss this is Maria Simeonova, head of the Sofia office, European Council of Foreign Relations. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello and thank you for having me.
So can you tell us what's the significance of the North Macedonian president's first visit to Sofia hold for Bulgaria and North Macedonia relations?
So every kind of visit of a Macedonian official to Bulgaria and vice versa is thoroughly looked at and thoroughly explained because in your expose you just try, you followed the history of the relations as of 1992 between the two countries. They have been quite challenging and turbulent, especially in the past years. So inevitably anything that happens between Sofia and Skopje and visits of officials and messages of officials are thoroughly examined in a way by the public, but also by analysts and so on. So this visit, as you said, was not official, and it was related to an opera, the opera Nabucco. The president of North Macedonia, Gordana Siljanovska, attended the event. On the very same day, there was a tragic event in Bulgaria, and therefore the president of Bulgaria, Rumen Radev, did not attend it, but just in the morning before the opera, two Bulgarian pilots lost their lives, and the president was there when this happened. So there were other circumstances on the very same day. So every visit of North Macedonian official is important because in July 2022, there was a very important breakthrough in the bilateral relations. Apparently, so in 2019 and 2020, Bulgaria started blocking the start of the accession talks between the EU and North Macedonia, and for some years there was no way out of this blockage and this impasse. So, brokered by the French presidency of the Council of the EU in July 2022, the so-called French proposal, which is in reality a bilateral protocol, was adopted. And one of Bulgaria's requirements towards North Macedonia, specifically naming the Bulgarians in the constitution of North Macedonia, this became part of the accession framework of North Macedonia with the EU. So in a way, this became from a Bulgarian requirement is now a European requirement. And until Skopje passes the constitutional changes, it cannot start officially the accession talks with the EU.
Right. You mentioned that any meeting between the two countries are thoroughly examined under the public and the media. Of course, there's like a magnifying glass trying to read into the situation. And I think one of the controversy that was brought up is what they call like the flag controversy, where there's not North Macedonian flag present when she was there, only the EU flag as well as the Bulgarian flag. Do you think we're reading too much into this, or are there also some sort of symbology behind it?
Well, whether it's a protocol mistake, but this is what I'm saying, that just because the relations and the public opinion, it's so dynamic, it's so tense, every misstep, every kind of accident is analyzed through different lenses, and people are reacting very furiously. And this is, I'm not saying that one country is to blame or another. I think both countries had responsibility to improve their relations and to work, towards being good neighbors, and Bulgaria helping Macedonia, North Macedonia in its path towards EU accession, and North Macedonia relying on Bulgaria as well, which was the case back in the years. But this is what I'm saying, that because of the controversial historical issues between the two countries, Sofia and Skopje cannot, and politicians, sometimes I think they don't want to get into the practical things, like, as you mentioned, infrastructure projects, academic exchanges, cultural exchanges. So cultural diplomacy will be very important here in order, to smoothen the relations, because this is to the benefit of both countries.
Right, like you mentioned, I think this cultural exchange that we're seeing right now might be a way to smooth out the dialogue between the two. It's non-hostile, it's kind of something that people can really get behind. Do you think that this cultural diplomacy is going to play this key role during the visit? Do you see that as a soft power approach to easing tensions?
It is one of the approaches that can be taken, not just cultural exchanges, but also student exchanges, academic exchanges, closer cooperation between the civil society sectors of the two countries. So this is just one leg. And the bilateral treaty signed in 2017 that you mentioned in your introduction gives a very good framework of how the bilateral relations can be, can develop but in the end of the day, it is up to the politicians in the two countries to fill it with substance and to do the practical steps. But I think, given that historical issues are kind of the source of tensions between the two countries, more focus should be put on these cultural exchanges and cultural diplomacy.
Right, you mentioned there is a little bit of reluctance to actually go into the nitty-gritty, to something more practical because of the complex of the situation between the two countries. Do you see that changing anytime soon with these unresolved historical and cultural disputes? How realistic is it for both nations to eventually find common ground near the future?
Well, currently, I think the bilateral relations, unfortunately, are at a very low point. And this is the result of, first, the political circumstances in both countries. We know that in Bulgaria for the past 3-4 years, we've been struggling to have a regular government lasting more than 10 months. In North Macedonia, in the May general election, a VMRO DPMNE political party came to power and formed the government. And this party has more like nationalistic leanings in a way. So right now, North Macedonia's advanced progress towards the EU accession is, in a way, hostage to nationalists, both in North Macedonia, but also in Bulgaria. There are still some actors that, use this issue in order to, gain something on the political scene. But the July 2022 so-called French proposal is very, very clear. North Macedonia's parliament has to pass the constitutional changes in order to start the accession talks. As of today, this hasn't happened because the majority is not there. At least there is until the general elections in May, there was no 2/3 majority in the parliament that would be able to pass these constitutional changes, naming the Bulgarians in the constitution.
Right, so there's still like kind of a political gridlock there. And speaking of which, you also mentioned the political situation within Bulgaria being also very complex. Can you help us understand a little bit of that?
Yeah, I'd love to, even though it's quite challenging, and it's been challenging to
extend this by another half an hour.
Exactly. We are in an unprecedented political situation. On 27th of October, we're gonna vote for the 7th time in a row at general elections. Our politicians are not able to form a regular government. This is not just happening in Bulgaria. We can see that throughout Europe, parties need to be very creative in getting into coalitions and making compromises. So we are in a very kind of challenging political times. But in Bulgaria, what is happening is that all the parliaments that are being produced following the elections are quite fragmented. And this whole situation is to the benefit mostly of one of the nationalist parties, the Party Revival, which is pro-Russian, nationalistic, anti-EU, anti-NATO, and basically this political turmoil is leading to increase of Revival's presence in the parliament. But just recently something different happened, because in this impasse something needs to happen in order to unblock the situation. So what will be different at the next elections is that one of the big parties in the Bulgarian parliament, the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, which is traditionally representing the Turkish minority in Bulgaria, some processes within the party led to its split into two. And this party is traditionally balancing the political system. And now with the turmoil inside of it, maybe we're going to witness some different results. Some analysts and colleagues of mine are expecting even 8th general election in a row after the 7th one. But I don't think we can make a realistic forecast. Things are changing quite dynamically.
Right, dynamic indeed. It's like you guys are going to have election Sundays on a week-to-week basis. Speaking of these political impasses, we're talking about foreign relations between not just North Macedonia, but other countries with relation to Bulgaria. Do you think that that's going to affect the domestic politics? Do you think politicians will use these as a talking point, as an issue to garner support for the voters? Or do you think the domestic policy will impact foreign policy more?
Well, domestic politics has been influencing foreign policy in a way that the political turmoil deprived Bulgaria of being more active on the European and the regional and the European scene. Bulgaria is an important country, because of its geographic location. We have the Black Sea coast, which, because of the start of the war in Ukraine, Russia has been doing controversial things in the Black Sea. So Bulgaria is a NATO member and an EU member that is supposed to be right now quite active on the Black Sea matters. We are an external EU border, so migration is something that Bulgarian policymakers should be paying a lot of attention to. And unfortunately, this political turmoil has been, a negative factor for Bulgaria being able to fully, exercise, to fully reveal its potential to be a factor in our region. Also, the Western Balkans integration into the EU. Before the veto that Sofia imposed over North Macedonia's start of accession talks, Bulgaria was a champion for the EU integration of the Western Balkans.
Right. Unfortunately, the domestic policies are making it very difficult for them to function.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.